Customer submitted photos are like your CX secret weapon. So if you are in voice of the customer, you need to know how to get them and how to use them. So last week was the first in a two-part series of episodes on this. Last week we talked about how you convince your survey respondents to share a whole bunch of really great photos, both the negative kind, but also certainly the positive kind in their CX feedback. And why not? People will take next year over 1 trillion photos, and they share over 1 billion photos with each other almost every day via social media and messaging apps. So really the trick is, how do we get them to just continue the sharing in one more place when they're talking to you in your voice of the customer surveys? This week we're going to talk about the other half of that. What do you do? What can you do once you've got this great flow of customer submitted photos coming in? How do you use it to amp up your voice of the customer program, get better employee engagement, better executive buy-in, and better ROI? So listen, there's some cool analytics things you can do and curation things you can do with photos once you have a lot of them coming in. And we talked a lot about that last season, in particular in episode 7. And we're going to talk about it again too. But for the purpose of today, I want to focus on the most important thing you can do once you have a lot of photos coming in from your survey respondents. I'll set the stage with a quote from a friend of mine, the brilliant Lior Arusi from Strativity Group. I saw Lior, I think it was last year, at a CX Talks event in Atlanta. And Lior was kind of sensing some complaining from the room from VOC managers about not getting the resources they need. And at one point, if you know Lior, he wouldn't pull his punches about this. He kind of called bullshit on that. And he said something that really stuck with me. He said this. He said, listen, when your CEO isn't giving you more resources, what's really happening there is he's looking at you and saying, I don't believe you can move the needle on our 100,000 employees. I just don't believe it, right? And of course, Lior is absolutely right. Listen, that's why photos are so important, because once you have them, once you have lots of them, once you have photos about very positive things, but also about very negative things, right? Your ability to get the employees of your company actively engaged in CX goes way, way up. Why do I say that? What do I mean? Well, here's what I mean. Think about what you're trying to do. You've been trying to do this probably for years, right? These 3 things. You're trying to get everyone from your front line to your C-suite to engage emotionally with what you're sharing with them. You're trying to get them to retain the information that you're teaching them, to really internalize it. And of course, you want them to have a more empathetic response to the customers that they're there to serve, right? The problem with this is that the text and numbers that most VOC platforms are built to distribute are actually a very suboptimal way of getting any of these things done. Let me share some facts to just illustrate this point. Let's take a look at how our brains are wired. Images come in through your eyes, where they're transmitted back to your occipital lobe. From there, your brain recruits up to 36 different parts of your brain to process what you're seeing. A full 40% of your nerve fibers are connected to your retinas. A whopping 90% of the information your brain processes is, in fact, visual. The parts of your brain responsible for speech and word processing are actually relatively small. According to Dr. Linnell Burmark, who's an educational expert, words are processed by our short-term memory. That's why I can ask you to repeat back everything I just said in the last 20 seconds, and you'll have a very hard time doing it. But images are directly encoded into the part of our brain responsible for long-term memory. And we're extremely good at it. You can remember something you saw for the rest of your life. you show a photo of a customer experience story to your employees, you make an impression, an indelible impression. Oh, and bonus for you. Do you remember that part about needing to get your company to engage emotionally in CX? Images cause faster, more powerful emotional reactions than words. Why is that? It's because visual memory is encoded in the same part of your brain, the medial temporal lobe, where we process emotions. So as you take to heart the things that you learned in the last episode to get your customers to share many, many more and much better quality photos as part of their CX feedback, don't forget to think hard about how you can put those images to work in getting your employees across even very large organizations to do these three things. Engage emotionally with what you're sharing, retain the information that you're teaching them, and of course have a more empathetic response in not just in big ways, but in very little ways when they are dealing with the customers they're there to serve. And are images going to replace KPIs and verbatims and things like that in your VOC program? Of course they're not. But what they are going to do is make you massively more effective at anchoring those things in something that's real and tangible and easy for people to remember and form the emotional reaction that you want them to have. And by the way, if you want to see examples of this at work, be sure and check out episode 7 from season 1 of 40 Billion Reasons called Automating CX Storytelling. You can find that on our website or just Google automating CX storytelling. Like a jillion people have seen this thing, so it'll come up number 1 on the search results. Okay, if you liked the last 2 episodes on photos and feedback, you are gonna love what we have for you next week. It sounds granola, but I swear it's not. Best self-activation. What happens when you connect the employees in your company with stories of themselves making uniquely great CX contributions? Is it 1, you get lower sick days? Is it 2, you reduce employee churn? Or is it 3, you get improved CSAT scores? Or is it all of the above? We'll see when the smarties at Harvard, London Business School, and University of Michigan talk us through best self-activation. You get the picture. See you next week, guys.